Hi everyone and welcome to another Gaffer in Gear. In today's episode I want to talk about a low budget music clip that I worked on called Way Back Down by an Australian group called Duo. Now it's not the biggest or the most elaborate shoot I've worked on, but I think there's some valuable lessons that can be learned from this job. Basically they had next to no lighting budget, so the job was primarily lit internally with practical lights, so non-film industry equipment. And the other thing that can be learned from is how the director of photography used windows basically to shape and get cinematic lighting. Alright, before we start talking about the shoot, I just need to give some credits. So first off, Gregory Kelly, who was the director, and it was also his concept. Dunn is the next person I'd like to give credit to. Dunn was the director of photography, so he's my boss. So thank you for hiring me and thank you for letting us show the footage. The next person the next two people I think who need to be thanked are the performers, Phoebe and Brett. Phoebe danced for hours on end on cement and Brett was also the choreographer. Now let's get into the brief. So basically I got a phone call. It's a low budget music clip. They pretty much only had money to hire gear. I came along for giggles because I was interested in the concept. But basically here was my brief. They were shooting it at night. They wanted the windows diffused and they wanted sky panels coming in through the windows. And they wanted sky panels so that they could adjust the CCT points. So basically through the dance routine, there's moments in the dance routine and in the song where the emotion changes, and they wanted to change the color of the lights coming through the window to reflect the performance, to work with the performance. So that's why we went sky panels, because of the very, very high CCT range. So we had moments at 10,000 Kelvin, we had moments at 2,800 Kelvin, and Kelvins in between. The next part of my brief was to supply a large soft light that we could move around easily in case it was needed. So I had an Aladdin 350 fabric light running off V-mount batteries. We pretty much didn't use that. Actually, that's a lie. We used it a fair bit as a cutter, but we didn't actually use it as a light source much. And I was also to supply some negative fill that we could move around quickly, which was just a floppy, and also a 4x4 quarter grid frame, which was in case we needed to reduce the light level a little bit on the dancers at any point. Basically, inside it was all Steadicam. Everything was Steadicam, no stick shots, everything Steadicam. And the inside was lit with practicals, so not supplied by me, supplied by art department. I supplied a few globes, but yeah, practically lit. So practicals, if you don't know, things like desk lamps, stuff that would be in shot, basically, stuff that you can have in shot, non-film industry equipment. And that made a lot of sense because it was Steadicam everywhere, so you couldn't really get lights in. And if you're thinking that you could light it from above, well, you had Steadicam shots pointing up with the dancers. So basically no choice but to light a practical, and some very, very clever practical lighting, which we'll talk about later. We did manage to find one spot in the ceiling where we could get a an LED 4-foot tube. That's the only clearance we had. So we did find one spot we could get a tube in as a hair light. But anyway, that was the brief. Let's have a look at some of the clip.
We knew that it was our time. We made a life beneath those neon lights. We tattooed our arms with flowers and guns and never stopped to question why. Drinking in the moonlight, we would never know where the sun would rise. Out on our own, on the tips of our toes. You were manic, but you were mine. And it's the edge of the view. There's been no left it behind. Stared into the sun, watched it flame out. Everything is stuck on the way back down. Stared into the sun, watched it flame out. Everything is stuck on the way back down. light does it shine? Ooh, the light does it shine? Not anymore. Ooh, the light does it shine? Ooh, the light does it shine? Not anymore. And it's the edge of the view that's been one after you. Yeah, stuck on the way back. Doesn't shine. Stuck on the way back. Yeah, stuck on the way back. Stuck on the way back down. Yeah, stuck on the way back down.
All right, so let's start talking through the setup. So it wouldn't be a low budget shoot unless there was some disaster or something didn't work right. And some of you may have noticed that one of the windows had no light coming through it. So when we rocked up, we discovered that this window here had a shipping container dumped right next to it. So we couldn't get any light through that window at all, but I don't think many people actually would have noticed it. Okay, next up, talk about the sky panels. Each sky panel had its intensifier in it, so trying to get the maximum light out of the sky panel. And the windows I diffused with 12 by 12 half grids. The reason I went a half grid is I wanted the lightest possible diffusion I could use to get maximum light transference, but it had to be dense enough that you wouldn't see the light source the other side. So my gut feeling was to go with a half grid cloth for that. Now, we didn't have the budget for a controller. Well, they didn't have the budget for a controller. So basically the sky panels, I had them all linked together with DMX cable. And the one down here, which was an S30, I used that as the master. So basically, if you have a sky panel set as a master, when it sends DMX out to the others, they basically work as slaves. So they all work together simultaneously. So my plan was, to keep this within budget and to achieve it, was to use the sky panel controller and then just save into the presets. So basically I just press a memory recall or a preset recall and the lights would change. So here's a big tip for you. Don't do that. It's actually a nightmare doing it. It doesn't work all that well. So off the controller, the sky panels all worked instantly and simultaneously to my hand controls. But when it came to recalling a memory, there was a huge delay of 1 second to 1.5 seconds. And it wasn't a consistent delay either. So it was impossible to time transitions. Other things, the practical lights. So you might have seen that the lights turned on cues. So we had a practical lamp here, a desk lamp that turned on to cue. And we had rows of festoons that turned on to cue. So basically, those units, the power from those was fed through a dimmer, which is DMX controllable. So basically, I had DMX going out of those dimmers back to my a little desk here that I had. When I say desk, I just mean this. So we're as cheap as you could get. So basically, I could, from that point there, I could command when the lights turned on by basically hitting the flash button. So basically as simple as that. Now, just one thing I want to point out, if you're trying to turn on prac lights on cue and they're incandescent or quartz halogen, you've got to preheat the globe. So if the globes are cold, say the festoon globes are all cold, when you hit the button on the dimmer, they're not going to fire up straight away. The element has to heat up. So what you can do on a lot of these dimmers, not every dimmer, but most will do it, is the manual control here, you can set as your minimum point that the dimmer goes to. So basically your DMX going in controls the rest and you can set your minimum point. So what I tend to do on these things is basically this situation here where I had that light, I'd look inside the prac lamp, look at the globe and get a glow in the element. So basically you turn it up full blast and then dim it down to the point where the globe's still on, but the camera can't see it. And that's called preheating the globe. Now, if you have a look at the festoons here, if you zoom in, you can see that they actually have a little bit of glow. They actually are preheated. Now, even with the preheat, it took 5 frames for the things to get up to heat. So if we step through a frame at a time, you can see it's not instantly on. It takes a while. Now, without the preheat, that would have taken 3/4 of a second to get those up to heat. Now, on the topic of the festoons, brilliant solution to the problem. There's a scene where they want the room to be lit up and soft, and the festoons are perfect for that. They meet the brief. They're really low cost, they're practical, so they don't look out of place when they're in shot, and when they're in shot, they look really good. So, fantastic solution there. I only wish it was my idea, but yeah, great solution. So by themselves, as individual globes, they're hard light sources, okay? But when you get 15 foot of them, it's a soft light source because it's now broader than your talent, so it wraps around nicely. And this is a really clever idea. This is where I think Daniel's a really smart DP. Is you've got this huge light source on that side, this huge light source on that side. You're steady camming everywhere. They get in shot, they look good. But if you're shooting this way, for example, you've got this humongous soft wrap, which looks great, and it's also lighting the background. You've got on this side, that's the key. That's the key light, nice and soft. If you're shooting this way, you've got a huge side wrap. Side wrap key, looks beautiful. Plus you've got the backlighting coming through off the windows. Very, very clever, elegant solution. So let's quickly go through some breakdowns. The title of this video is Using Windows for Cinematic Light Sources. So let's talk about that. So basically our talent is positioned roughly about here. Okay, so this window is her key light, her edge light key light. And Daniel's positioned her so that the light from the window back here basically gives the glow through the smoke that's at her back. Now, one thing to point out, there's a lot of haze in the room, so that's adding a lot of atmosphere to the shots. Now, in this shot, it's pretty obvious that Brett's kicker or scratch light is the window that's directly behind him. But his key light is actually this window up here. Now, in between Brett and the window, so Brett was about here, we had our 4x4 frame just to reduce the light a little bit. And previously I said it was a quarter grid, but I think it might have actually been a silk. So the next shot is after the festoons have faded. So he's standing roughly about here. His key light is a back edged through this window. So basically that window is his 10-foot key light. His scratch light on his shoulder, or his kicker light, is coming from this window down here. And his hair light is the 4-foot tube that we've managed to cram into the ceiling. And as we faded the festoons down, we changed the colour coming in through the windows. Now in the next shot, they're standing in roughly the same position, but the camera is facing this way. So we've got this window here and this window here, along with the festoons, beautifully edge lighting them. Their key light is this row of festoons over here. In this shot, our performers are standing in the same spot, but our camera is shooting this way. The overall ambience is supplied by the festoons, and our kick lights or scratch light is supplied by light coming through this window and light coming through this window. The next shot is my favourite shot for lighting in the whole clip, and actually all of 2019, because it conveys so much emotion. And it's not just because the colour of the light changed. If you have a look at the shot at the start, her eyes are dead. There's no reflections in her eyes. And then at the end of the shot, there's lots of reflections. So basically, when she started out here, she was on an angle where this window couldn't give her an eye light or a catch light. And as she walked towards it, it gave her a catch light. Now, the other thing too is the other catch light that's in her eyes is coming from this window down here. Now, as she moved forwards, we had a floppy blocking that, and we moved that floppy out of the way so that the reflections would be apparent in her eyes. So anyway, before I finish off by showing the clip, big thank you again to Daniel Dunn, the DOP, for letting me show his work and talk about his work, and also for getting me on the job. It was a lot of fun. And also to Greg Kelly, the director again. There is also, in the description below, there is a list of full credits because everybody put a lot of work into this and it just looks fantastic. I'm Andrew Locke. See you on the next episode of Gaffer and Gear.
We knew that it was our time. We made a life beneath those neon lights. We tattooed our arms with flowers and guns and never stopped to question why. Drinking in the moonlight, we would never know where the sun would rise. Out on our own, on the tips of our toes. You were manic, but you were mine. And it's the edge of the view. There's been no one after you. Stared into the sun, watched it flame out. Everything's dark on the way back down. Edge of the high, and we both left it behind. Stared into the sun, watched it flame out. Everything is stuck on the way back down. Looking in, you say we were still right at the start, but one step before the end. It never really made sense, but we could touch the castle in our minds. Was a place we would go just to be on our own, but we left the best parts behind. And it's the edge of the view. There's been no one after you. Stared into the sun, watched it flame out. Everything's dark on the way back down. Edge of the high, and we both left it behind. Stared into the sun, watched it flame out. Everything is stuck on the way back down. Stuck on the way back down.